Om Jnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namashreshtham Manamapi Shachiputram Atraswarupam Rupam Tasyagaram Uruparim Mathurim Goshavati Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Shri Guru Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosma Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Ataf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Today is a very happy day, very special day. By Srila Prabhupada's mercy, every day is a happy day and a special day. But especially today, we'll meditate on the source of our happiness. The source of our happiness is, of course, the appearance of Srila Prabhupada in our otherwise wretched and condemned lives. It's a complete difference between prior to coming in the mercy shade of Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet and afterwards. So it's a day also of great awe and reverence, like a mouse looking up at a mountain. Sometimes myself being on the order of Srila Prabhupada, being in the position of guru to some followers of Srila Prabhupada, it seems difficult for me to convey to some of those disciples what the reality is. That really Srila Prabhupada is Paramahamsa, and I am simply trying to follow in his footsteps. He is the empowered representative of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. And the best thing I can do in trying to represent him is to not get in the way of his powerful and fully spiritual and pure teachings. Of course, every day we should glorify and remember Srila Prabhupada. We may wonder, well, why so much glorification? But a better way to think is, why not more? The Guru is to be considered as worshipable as Krishna. And what to speak of the spiritual master of the whole universe. Now, we are enjoined to celebrate this festival today. And it is possible to do so as some kind of formality. Things that we are enjoined to do, we often do just because we're enjoined to do so. We could ask the devotees in the kitchen to talk a little less loudly, or no more than needed. But actually, without feeling, there's no meaning to all of this. That feeling also cannot be artificial. Well, I guess it could be, but that's not the real thing. Our appreciation of Srila Prabhupada will be directly proportional to how much we, throughout our lives, seriously, sincerely endeavor to surrender to him, which means to follow his instructions. And following his instructions also means with feeling, not just like a robot. Sometimes I am criticized for being too much assiduous to rules and regulations. But they're not my rules and regulations. They've been given by Srila Prabhupada and through the parampara coming from Krishna. And they're meant to help us to become Krishna conscious. It's meaningless to express feeling for the Guru and not follow his instruction. His instructions are the very means by which he helps us. There's no meaning to being a Guru without instruction. And there's no meaning to being a disciple unless one is prepared to follow those instructions. And not just to follow, but to make them our life and soul. Now, the essence of Krishna consciousness is not rules and regulations, but they are required to bring us to the essence, which is pure, unconditional love of Godhead. So if feeling is required, that is bhakti. But it's not some mundane emotion. And it's not something that can be just turned on and turned off as we feel like it. That mercy of loving feelings for Krishna is a gift from Krishna. And that applies also to loving feelings for the Guru and for Srila Prabhupada. If we try to artificially turn it on when we want and then forget it at other times, then we become what is called prakrita sahajiyas, or artificial devotees. Srila Prabhupada gives pure love of Godhead, pure love of Krishna. But that is not a cheap thing. To be able to take that gift, we have to be able to reject everything else. Sarvadhaman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. To fully take shelter in Krishna, abandoning all else. We can't take Srila Prabhupada on our own terms and conditions. To come to him means on his terms and conditions. And Srila Prabhupada, although he described himself as very lenient, from our perspective might seem to be a hard taskmaster with all these rules, just like 4 regulative principles. Sometimes we hear about 3.5 regulative principles. But this is certainly not something that Srila Prabhupada taught us. Then not watching TV, not cultivating any affinity for anything mundane. Honoring only Krishna Prasadam and not anything else. So we may think, well, I don't need all these things. Or we may cheat ourselves and say, well, I'm not ready for all these things. So I'll just be at my own level. You can be, but then you don't need a guru. Because surrender to a guru means to come beyond the level we're on and make that serious endeavor to come to the proper level. So we may think, well, I don't need all these things. I can chant Hare Krishna. I don't really need Srila Prabhupada or anyone else to tell me so many things. Srila Prabhupada gave us a general idea of Krishna consciousness for which we're grateful. But I don't need someone to tell me what to do in every facet of my life. Then you don't need a guru. Or you may have some other guru. We don't need Srila Prabhupada. We can get some guru. There are so many Gauriya Maths and Babajis and different sampradayas. How much do you want to float away? You could have some mystic yogi guru. We like a guru who doesn't intrude into our privacy. So we can just take what we like from what the guru gives and not take what we don't like. Some kind of buffet system. But that's not what it means to have what Srila Prabhupada called a spiritual master. We hear about the early days of ISKCON, how there was so much ecstasy. Why is that not much perceived nowadays in our movement? Because there is less surrender and less faith. You can't get the bliss without the surrender. And Srila Prabhupada, he pushed his disciples to surrender. He didn't make it easy for them. Well, in some ways he did. Again, he said, I'm 80% more lenient than my spiritual master. But at the same time, he gave a way of life that, compared to the hedonistic life of the Western world, was patently austere, plainly austere. But It works. What Srila Prabhupada gives us works. If we follow, we benefit. If we don't, then we don't. So we may think, well, I don't really need all this stuff. Indirectly we're saying, I don't need Srila Prabhupada. I can live life on my own terms. I can chant a few rounds and follow a few principles and be a devotee. Well, I guess you can. You can even get a guru to sanction that and apparently sanctify that. So we may think then, what do we need Prabhupada for? We can find a more merciful guru. More merciful means, in the definition of those who wish to cheat themselves, is someone who lets me do all nonsense and at the same time blesses me with Krishna prema. Or I can find some guru like that who's just nice. Or we can redefine Srila Prabhupada to be a nice, smiling old man. Maybe like a smiling Buddha, laughing Buddha. And he just loves us, that's all. The unlimitedly merciful and tolerant Srila Prabhupada has been invented. Unlimitedly merciful, yes. But that unlimited mercy manifests not as indulging us in doing whatever we want to do, but not in not indulging us in whatever we want to do. So we have to ask ourselves, how much do we want Srila Prabhupada? How much do we want his mercy? We have to ask ourselves individually and as a movement. We may think, well, we don't really need everything that Prabhupada taught us. Chanting Hare Krishna, okay, that's nice. I think, tick on that box. Following all these principles, tick or X, maybe I'll just leave it blank. But, Guru Mukha Padmavaka Chitete Koriya Aikya Ana Koriya Manayasha. This is the only way to accept a guru, is to fully accept everything that he says. Sarvametadritang manye yanmang varsikeshava. As Arjuna said to Krishna, I accept everything that you say as truth. So we may think that, Prabhupada gave all these things. It's a good starter, but, we can mix in so many other things. And therefore we see various fads and fashions because of such an attitude. That's enough. Fads and fashions, it just means fashions, that's all. Mode, that's fashion, it's a similar word in English. Modish means fashionable. And so we have all different ideas devotees come up with at different times. What we really need is a good admixture of mundane psychology or some chakras or what we really need to do is to take advice from all these mundane scholars. Oh, don't call them mundane scholars, that's offensive. Well, Prabhupada called them mundane scholars. Oh, well, that's Prabhupada, he can do that. No, we can't do that. Well, are they mundane or are they not? Is Prabhupada speaking the truth or is he not? The misapplication of the humility principle is typical of Prakrita Sahajiyas, who show themselves to be very humble, but actually they're very proud. They're very proud because they think they have a better idea than that of the pure devotees. And therefore they want to mix all kinds of mundane ideas into Krishna consciousness and say that, well, this is real Krishna consciousness. So in Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, we have to decide, do we actually want Srila Prabhupada or not? Do we need Srila Prabhupada? You can be Krishna conscious in some other way, somewhat different way. There are many people all over the world nowadays who are Krishna conscious. They don't even have direct allegiance to Srila Prabhupada. They are Krishna conscious in Gauriya Math or followers of different Babajis. And they don't pay any particular attention to Srila Prabhupada. In the Gauriya Math, they may do. They may at least acknowledge that Srila Prabhupada's contribution in bringing Krishna consciousness to the Western world. And everyone in the Western world who is Krishna conscious, including many Indians, they should acknowledge that if it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada, there wouldn't be any Gauriya Math or Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya or any such thing in the Western world. So at the very least they should acknowledge Srila Prabhupada's contribution. But we shouldn't think that it's just some kind of job like some task that anyone could have done. We shouldn't underestimate Srila Prabhupada's task in bringing Krishna consciousness to the Western world. Nowadays it might seem that, well, it's not such a difficult thing to do. But it was. It was practically considered impossible, to the extent that no one in India was even thinking about it. It's just like something like, who among us is thinking of taking a spacecraft out to Jupiter? I don't think anyone's thinking of that. You might think, well, maybe there's some living entities out there to initiate. Better go and find them. But we're not thinking because it's an impossibility. No one was thinking of going to India, from India to preach Krishna consciousness in the West. It was like that. It was an impossibility. Now we can't perceive that because Srila Prabhupada made the preaching field in the Western world. So everyone should be thankful to Srila Prabhupada. It may not be that everyone joins his ISKCON. That's a fact that we see. Or maybe those who join ISKCON and then officially or unofficially distance themselves from it. But anyone who is in Krishna consciousness should acknowledge that it would not have been possible if it hadn't been for the efforts of Srila Prabhupada. And it wasn't just that, well, Srila Prabhupada came and chanted a bit and then initiated a few disciples here and there. But he really is Jagat Guru. As a representative of Krishna, he is worthy to be considered or recognized as the spiritual master of the whole universe. Srila Prabhupada said, if you want to know me, read my books. He described his purports as his devotional ecstasies. When asked, what will happen to this movement after you die? Srila Prabhupada replied, Srila Prabhupada said, I will never die. He said, I will live forever in my books, and you can take advantage. So he shouldn't think that, well, Srila Prabhupada has books, and then so many other people are writing books, and it's all the same. But these books are the basis of cultivating, understanding, and distributing pure Krishna consciousness. That's true. It was true when Srila Prabhupada was personally present. It's true now. And it will continue to be true as long as this movement goes on in this present Kali Yuga. So we must take Srila Prabhupada's books very seriously. Without doing so, then our apparent worship of Srila Prabhupada will be superficial. We may think, okay, I read Prabhupada's books, now it's time to go on to something else. Not realizing that Srila Prabhupada's books contain all the profound truths that we need for becoming fully Krishna conscious. And for making the whole world Krishna conscious. They're not simply some beginner's guide to be left behind when you become on a higher level. And there's no question of going to a higher level than what Prabhupada has given us in his books. Because therein he has described the highest levels of Krishna consciousness and how to rise to that level. As Srila Prabhupada said, my books will be the law books for the next 10,000 years. So it is possible to think that We don't need Srila Prabhupada. Individually and as a movement we could think like that. Of course in our movement no one would dare to say that. But we have to see by actions and words. If devotees simply want to formally acknowledge Srila Prabhupada, but to not preach as he preached, or live as he enjoined us to live. If we have other ideas about social organization or science or Krishna consciousness or anything, then we are maybe politely sidelining Srila Prabhupada. But it's not actually very polite. It's like the demons' hypocrisy when they say that we humanely kill animals. The very act is wrong. So how to say that, well we do it in a good way, it's simply hypocritical. Srila Prabhupada is very heavy. Endeavors to make him light will not be successful. With great foresight, Srila Prabhupada put so much effort into writing his books. They stand as the record of who he actually is, what he actually teaches. If we dare, we can read his books. Because in his books, Srila Prabhupada doesn't just present in an academic or formal way what is Krishna consciousness. He pushes us in every line, in every word, in every letter, and even in the space in between the letters to surrender to Krishna. Some mundane academics criticize Srila Prabhupada's books on that account. They say these are not scholarly works, they're sectarian works. Do they think that Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita and Vyasadeva gave the Shastra just so these worm in stool scholars could come along and analyze them according to their mundane psychological nonsense ideas? As if the way, the only real way to analyze anything is through their contaminated consciousness, their mundane method. Krishna didn't speak Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Okay, let's have a philosophical discussion. Here's my idea, what's your idea? Maybe someone will come along later with a better idea. It wasn't like that. It was, Bhagavad Gita is spoken with a particular purpose in mind, to deliver Arjuna from ignorance and engage him in Krishna consciousness. So all the Shastra is meant for that. The whole Vedic system, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, the Sampradayas, the Paramparas, it's all meant ultimately to give us Krishna consciousness. To point out what should be done and what should not be done. So to criticize a guru for presenting Shastra as it's meant to be presented, because they have their own stupid ideas of how Shastra should be analyzed. They think they're very intelligent, but they don't realize how completely absurd they are. So we as a movement should accept Srila Prabhupada as he is. He always emphasized we have to take Bhagavad Gita as it is, not as we wish it to be. That was Arjuna's position. He wanted to adjust the world according to the way he thought it should be. Bhagavad Gita begins with Arjuna preaching to Krishna, indirectly saying, Krishna, you got it all wrong bringing me out on this battlefield. I've had a shaft of realization. Shaft means just like if there's a dark room and there's a small opening and then the sun rays comes in very brightly in one stream. It's called a shaft of light. So it's Arjuna had a great realization. I have to tell Krishna. Krishna, he didn't understand this, but I understand. I have to tell Krishna this fighting is wrong. So is it that if Srila Prabhupada came today, we say, actually Prabhupada, you got it all wrong. This is how ISKCON should be. You didn't really understand it, but now we've understood better. That is impudence. Impudence means the insulting of a junior to trying to rise above a senior. Just as we have to take Bhagavad Gita as it is, we have to take Srila Prabhupada as he is. The message is very heavy. The message for Arjuna is you have to fight, you have to kill. Of course, for Arjuna to fight and kill, that was nothing new, he was used to that. But in that circumstance, it was very heavy and very difficult to attack his gurus. Here, of course, the word guru means his seniors, not spiritual instructors. Of course, we are not called upon to engage in such drastic acts, but in one sense we are. The real or the underlying message is that we have to surrender to Krishna, and that is the path to our highest welfare. Failure to follow that means that we're cut off from our own welfare. We have to surrender to Krishna. That is the message for all of us. And we have to do so via the agency of Srila Prabhupada. We may think that, well, yeah, my guru, he's not so heavy as Prabhupada, so I'll follow him. But there's no meaning to being a guru in ISKCON unless one follows Srila Prabhupada. And there's no meaning to just lip service to Srila Prabhupada. Lip service, it means superficial follow. So let us understand what are Srila Prabhupada's instructions and desires. We can do so from his books. And in this way we can actually become followers of Srila Prabhupada. That is the real meaning of Vyasa Puja. It's good, but it's not so meaningful to celebrate Vyasa Puja without following or without making a serious endeavor throughout the rest of the year to surrender to Srila Prabhupada's instructions. We can't fool Srila Prabhupada and bring out some flowers and a big feast and say, Jai Prabhupada! And the rest of the year we're not very serious to dedicate ourselves to his instructions and his mission as it is. So the mercy of Srila Prabhupada is very powerful, and it's very purifying. It's very pleasing, but it's not cheap. We shouldn't think that we can get the mercy without making ourselves really prepared to take it. We shouldn't think that we can get the mercy without making ourselves prepared to take it. Nashto moha smritim labdha tvat prasadan mayachuta. Arjuna said to Krishna after hearing the Bhagavad Gita that now my ignorance is dispelled and I've come to my proper understanding again by your mercy, Achyuta, Krishna. Then what's the next line? Tvat prasadam mayachuta. What is it? Sitosmi gata sandeha karishe vachanam tava. Now all my doubts are gone, they're dispelled, and I'm ready to follow your instruction. So, to accept, in the same way, to accept Srila Prabhupada's mercy means to be ready to follow his instruction. And that will, Srila Prabhupada's instructions are meant to prepare us for the blissful life of pure devotional service to Krishna. So we can't have one without the other. We can't, the half chicken philosophy doesn't work. I want the happiness of Krishna consciousness that Srila Prabhupada gives, but I don't like all this stuff, all this other stuff. All this stuff, giving up sense gratification and dedicating yourself, and it's too much. I'll just take the bliss and leave out the other stuff. Or I don't need this Prabhupada. I'll find some guru who just gives bliss and doesn't ask us about all these other things. So that is a kind of cheating process. And at least, we can't stop cheating in this world because this is the world of cheating. But at least we should keep it out of Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON. This movement is the only hope to deliver the world from its dark, dark condition. But if we make no tangible difference between this movement and the world, then how is it going to save the world? Hare Krishna. Any question about this? I don't know. No question. So we can sing another.